Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video, and especially another video in our Linux journey. As we take our next step and we learn all about logs, and I know sometimes that may not be a sexy topic, but it's also very vital because logs allow you to monitor your system and also as well troubleshoot your system. Since there's a lot of information when it comes to logs, I've broken this video up into two parts, so that way I don't overload you guys with a lot of information. Now, before we jump into logs, make sure you go ahead and give me a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified whenever we upload new videos to the channel. And share this with a friend or a family member who's interested in learning about Linux. Or maybe they just want to see my channel. I got a lot of other cool content on here. So let's head over to the desktop and let's go ahead and tackle part 2. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about between the two of them is filtering and querying. How do we go ahead and see what it is that we want to see and what we want to focus on? Because logs can get very big and we need a manner in which we can easily find what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and clear our screen. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. And let's open up another window. In order to show you how to query/filter these logs, I'm going to be using a command that we haven't touched before, and it's called logger. And if I take a look at the man page for logger, you can see here that logger enters a message into the system logs. So essentially, it's a program that allows you to write to the system log, so that way you can do some tests and see if those logs are actually being generated. Now I'm going to generate a message using logger, and I'm going to say subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. Now let's head over to journal D and use some interesting commands to see how we can find that in the logs. And one of the things that I'll teach you is journal ctl -- since, and you can actually tell it to show you the logs from a certain point in time. So if I want to say 1 hour ago, it actually shows us the logs all from the last hour. And how do I go ahead and find subscribe to Acosta E.T.F.? And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. But of course, since it's the last hour, that log, or that entry to the log, should I say, is all the way in the bottom. So let's head to the bottom. And you can see here at 19:48:25, subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. was put into the logs. So really cool how we were able to use the -- since in order to adjust how many logs we're able to see. And by the way, you can adjust this to whatever you like. So we can say 5 minutes ago, and you can see that instead of an hour, I've adjusted it to only 5 minutes worth of logs. And so very cool. You can go ahead and play around with that. Now, while we're on journal D, let me show you some other neat tricks when it comes to journal ctl command. And let's say, for example, you want to view the logs of a specific service. Let's say SSH as an example. I can do the command journal ctl -u, and let's go ahead and put SSH D on there. And you can see that it returns all the different entries as it relates to SSH. Now, what if you're searching for something specific? Let's say we were searching for subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. We can use the same command journal ctl, and we can pipe that now into a grep, and we can search for the word subscribe. And let's hit enter on that. And you can see that we were able to filter out what we needed, which is the message that I said earlier, which is subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. So one last thing that I want to show you when it comes to journal D, what if I wanted to take a look at the logs in real time? So we can do the command journal ctl -f and hit enter on this. And you can see now that we are actually viewing those logs in real time. So if I were to go back to my terminal over here and I were to do the logger command, and let's say you are learning about logs, and let's hit enter on that. You can see here in real time, we actually saw that you are learning about logs showed up, and you can watch all those logs being written in real time from a journal D perspective. Pretty cool there. So let's go ahead and quit out of this. Now you just saw different ways in which you can filter or query logs using journal D. Let's do the same now with our syslog. Now, because our syslog is just regular plain text files, there's no real command that is built in for our syslogs. You just have to use regular commands that are built into the operating system itself. So let's say as an example, if we wanted to take a look in real time, what those logs are from an rsyslog perspective, you have to use the tail command. So let's take a look real quick at what the tail command is. And as you can see here, it says output the last parts of a file. I would have to do sudo tail-f. And let's go ahead and take a look at the log files, especially from a messages perspective. So remember where the storage was. So var/log/messages. And those are the two messages that we put using logger. So subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. and you are learning about logs. So if I were to write here logger, and let's go ahead and input our message, real time using rsyslog, and hit enter, you can see that it says real time using rsyslog. And of course, using is spelled incorrectly. Please don't kill me in the comments, I know. Now, from an rsyslog perspective, what if we're trying to find something specific? So let's quit out of this. And since it's stored in plain text, really we can use any command in order to help us filter. So I can do sudo grep. And of course, grep allows us to find strings within particular files. So I can search for subscribe, and I'll point it to our var/log/messages. And of course, as you can see here, it shows us the log that was generated when we used the logger command to say, subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. Now, one of the things that I'm hoping that you're seeing is that, again, as we discussed in the beginning, Journal D has more advanced capabilities than rsyslog does. Now, before I move on to the next topic, which talks about managing these log files, because again, they will grow in size, especially when you are keeping track of so many things. But before I talk about that, there's one last thing that I want to show you guys, and that is something that's very important, and we talked about it in the beginning, is how do you go ahead and monitor from a security perspective things that are going on with the machine. So let's take a look at a quick example of how when working in organizations, and especially I've had this in the past, I'd get these random emails from people saying, hey, was this you who logged into this machine and made X amount of wrong entries? And I had to respond saying, yes, that was me. You know, I just fat fingered, my password a couple of times. Because when you're working with these systems that are tightly controlled, they want to make sure that the person who is intended to use it is actually using it. So let's go ahead and lock this machine here. So with the machine locked now, let's go ahead and try to unlock it. And I'm going to intentionally put the wrong password 2 times. So let's put in the password incorrectly once. All right, you can see here that authentication didn't work. We failed. Let's do it again. All right, so that also failed. So now let's go ahead and put in our password correctly. And of course, I fat fingered it a 3rd time. And a 4th time. There we go. It took 5 times in order for me to get it right. Anyways, let's take a look at those logs that are generated now from a security perspective to see that I wasn't able to pass the authentication. Let's go ahead and use journal control, and I'm going to pipe that into a less, and let's go all the way to the bottom. And when you're looking at this, you can see it's called CHK password PWD, and there was a couple of them. So remember, I think I failed it, what was it, 4 times? Yep, there it is. So you can see here at 2002, there was the first one that I failed, 2002-15, 2002-37, 2002-49, and 2002-56. Those were the 4 times that I actually failed. So now when you're monitoring all these Linux systems, one of the easiest things that you can do is you can use the control-ctl command and you pipe it into a grep, and then you search for PWD, and it shows you all the times that I failed the password checks. And by the way, I failed it earlier, as you can see. So this is one of the ways that these system administrators or these cybersecurity analysts would go ahead and monitor all the Linux machines on the network. And then based off of this data that they can pull off of the machines, they would send emails to folks and say, hey, was this you who was logging into the machine? And let's just say after a while, I got tired of those emails. So as you guys can tell, there's a lot of data and there's a lot of things that is being captured from a log perspective and being stored. So now the next question is, well, what mechanisms do we have in place in order to manage this? One of the ways in which we can manage logs, we use the command called log rotate. Let's take a quick peek at log rotate. So if I were to do a man log rotate, you can see here that log rotate allows us to rotate, compress, and mail system logs. Now, one of the ways in which we configure log rotate is to go into the configuration file for log rotate, and I'll show you guys where that is. So if I were to do a sudo vi/etc/log rotate.conf, we can see here that here's the configuration in order to use log rotate. Now, as you can see here, the logs are set in order to rotate weekly. It keeps 4 weeks worth of backlogs. And then afterwards, it creates an empty log file after rotating the old ones. That's what this next line means. And as you can see here, the next option says use date as a suffix of the rotated file. Now, if you want to compress those log files, you would uncomment this compress. And when it comes to the last two items, when we look at this log rotate config file, I'll let you go ahead and use the man page in order to look at log rotate. And you guys can take a look and see what the last two items mean. All right, quick little rundown. Let's go ahead and get out of here and take a look at what that looks like. So again, if I were to take a quick peek here, remember, one of the things that we have listed in this configuration file is we use the date as a suffix of the rotated file. So if I were to do an ls/var/log/messages, and I want to go ahead and put a star here because I want to find any log that is associated with messages and it has anything on the suffix. And we can see here that there was different files that were rotated from the past. Let's go ahead and let's do an ls-la to view a little bit more information. Now, as you can see here, these logs were rotated in the past and the date was added when log rotate ran. So if we were to go back to that log rotate configuration file, so let's do a sudo vi etc log rotate config file, we can see our results matching to what we see over here. Since these virtual machines don't run all the time, these are the times in which it ran from a weekly perspective. The big thing that I want you to see here is also the option that says keep 4 weeks worth of backlogs. And so as you're seeing on the left-hand side, there is the 4 that we have in our configuration. And you can see here that we have back in August, we have October, November, and of course, January. And remember, I don't really keep these virtual machines on. So you're seeing logs that are missing in between, and that's the reason why. So you certainly learned a lot about logs. And the last thing that I'm gonna show you guys, and this is really, really cool, and it also shows you the difference between journald and our syslog. And I wanna talk to you about remote logging. Now, what is remote logging? Well, remote logging is a really cool feature that's built into our syslog, and it allows you to set up a server as a receiver, and that's typically called the log server. And you can set up another server as the log client, or what's known as the sender. And this goes back now to the beginning where I had the RHEL 8 and the RHEL 9 side by side. So let's go ahead and get out of full screen mode here. Let's close out of this. Now let's log into our RHEL 9 machine. So let's go ahead and clear our terminal over in our RHEL 8 box. Now, in order to understand the setup, our RHEL 8 box is the log server or the receiver, meaning, hey, it's gathering information from other machines. In our RHEL 9 box, which is on the right-hand side, that is called our log client, meaning it's going to send its logs out to a receiver, which is the RHEL 8. So in order to see this happening in real time, I'm gonna go ahead and say tail-f on the receiver, right? We're seeing the messages that are coming into the box. And I'm gonna take a look at var/log/messages. And of course, we're going to elevate our privileges. Excellent, so we see that there. And now I'm gonna head over to our RHEL 9 box, which is going to be our sender. And I'm gonna use the logger command in order to send a message over to our RHEL 8 machine, which is going to be our server, or should I say our log server, which is the receiver. So I'm gonna say subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. Let's hit enter on that. Isn't that really cool? In real time, you guys saw the sender send its log message over to the receiver. Let's do one more. So if I were to say logger, why haven't you subscribed? There you go. You saw another one happen in real time. And seriously, why haven't you subscribed to the channel? Subscribe. But that is really cool, guys. You can actually set up built-in remote forwarding. And so where is this useful, you might ask? Well, let's say you have a whole enterprise full of Linux boxes, and let's say we couple that with what we learned earlier, meaning what happens if you were to fail your password check and you want to see it across all the machines in the enterprise? Let's say you got 100 of them. Well, this is an easy way in order to set that up. And when I say easy, of course, there is a little bit of configuration on the back end. And if you guys are interested in learning about that, maybe I can make another video about what I did in order to configure this. But at least you're getting to see how you can start to network these machines together in order to do some really cool things, such as monitoring the logs of all the different machines. Now that you guys have seen the logs actually being sent over to the receiver, and you saw that from a system perspective, you saw the Acosta E.T.F, subscribe to the channel. You also saw why haven't you subscribed, which of course, I asked that question, why haven't you subscribed? The next one that I want to show you, which is really cool, not only is it for system messages, but it's for the other logs as well. So if I were to do a tail on our RHEL 8 box, remember, this is the receiver, this is what's getting the messages. If I were to do a tail-f, and let's go ahead and do a var log, and let's do secure. Remember, that is our authentication issues that we have. Let's put a sudo in front of that. You can see here now, if I were to go to our RHEL 9 box and go ahead and lock our machine, let's go ahead and fail the authentication on purpose and see what we get. So I'm going to say wrong password, hit enter. You can see in real time, it even tells you that our RHEL 9 VM, the password for the login was invalid. It even tells you right there, 20, 24, 57, we actually failed. Let's do it one more time so we can see that in real time. So if I'm gonna write the incorrect password again, you saw in real time, it actually updated 20, 25, 21, our password was incorrectly put in. So let me go ahead and log into the machine now. And you could even see, it even told you that I unlocked the machine using the correct password, and it showed you that at 20, 25, 34. How awesome is that? You can literally monitor any machine on the network using our syslog and its remote logging capabilities. How phenomenal is that? So by now, I've showed you guys so many different things when it comes to Journal D or our syslog. And after all this, you may be asking yourself, well, which one do I use? And the answer is you use both, and it depends on your needs. So when you think about it from a storage perspective, or you think about filtering, or you think about these remote capabilities, our syslog or Journal D might be able to fit the bill depending on what you're looking to do. So welcome back, guys. By now you've learned a lot about logs, and hopefully you can use some of the information that you've learned here in order to monitor or troubleshoot your Linux systems. Now keep in mind, this is a lot of information that you just learned, so if this is your first time seeing this, don't feel overwhelmed like you're never going to get this. Go ahead and keep practicing. Practice makes perfect. And even though I'm teaching you today about Linux, this is over many years. It's not something that I learned overnight. So keep at it, and you'll be at mastering logs, or just Linux in general. Now stay tuned to the channel, guys, as more Linux content is coming on the way. But until then, make sure you go ahead and give me a like for the video, as it helps the channel grow. Subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified whenever I upload new videos to the channel. And share this with a family member or friend. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.